Book 3, Chapter 15, Peace. We walk into the lobby of the facility and wait for Mr. Max. It is quiet. There isn't anyone about. Dad and I continue to wait until we hear footsteps. From the doorway stood Mr. Max. "Hello, you two," he says as he extends his hand. "Hello, Mr. Max. Thank you for seeing us today. I thought you might be back to visit, but I didn't realize you would come so soon. I am grateful to have your company." My dad says, "As you know, we have lost a dear friend and a cherished family member. He was both to us, as he was a friend before we discovered he was part of our family. It was a miracle that we found one another." Mr. Max invites us to sit in the lounge that has the painting. As we take our seats, my dad continues to say, "It wasn't long after we found out Edward was family that he passed. He knew he wasn't well, but didn't want to burden us with the worry. Therefore, to us, he passed suddenly, but to Edward, he was well aware." Mr. Max sits and studies my dad's face. I can see him look into his eyes. "I sense that you have had a great loss in your lives," he says to the two of us. "What makes you think I have answers?" His comment makes my dad hesitant to answer. Mr. Max knows we haven't come here just to seek answers, but somehow he knows that we have come to discuss Sir and his connection to the facility. "We noticed the painting here the last time we visited, and you mentioned that a gentleman donated the portrait because his beloved was here. The name on the portrait is Edward John, and that was Sir's name, which made us ponder if it is the same Edward John, because we are seeking to find Edward's beloved." Mr. Max studies our faces again in silence. It is a comfortable silence, and then I hear my heart say, "Ask if his beloved is still here." "Mr. Max, would you know if the lady is still here?" I ask carefully. "Why, yes, Finnan, I do know. I know that she is, in fact, still here." "Still here!" I exclaim with great excitement. "Dad, she is still here!" I want to jump up and down, but I'm not in the right company or place to be doing so. I want to be as mature as my dad and Mr. Max. "Do you think she would speak with us?" I ask in a hopeful tone. "Your beautiful friend has spoken with her. She was Limerick's partner in the interview." "The lady from Ireland?" "Yes, Finnan, the lady from Ireland." "Dad, did you hear that? I met the lady. She is as lovely as the photo in the hallway. She is older, but I am now sure it could be her." "Finnan, please don't get ahead of yourself." Mr. Max, realizing the importance and the delicateness of the conversation, asks if we would like to speak with her. "Yes," I say with such eagerness. "Dad, we can, right?" "Yes, son, but please don't get excited until we meet her. What if she is unaware that Edward has passed? What if they haven't seen each other for a while? We have to be considerate and compassionate because we don't have all the details. We are following the breadcrumbs, Dad. My heart is leading the way. Please excuse me for one moment while I see if I can locate her." As we wait patiently, we go over to the portrait and study the scene of the waves crashing against the mighty rock and the lighthouse looking so tall and solid, all-knowing, like it can speak directly to us. While we are waiting, my heart is whispering, "Love is the answer." At last, In walks Mr. Max with a lady holding his arm. "Please have a seat," he says gently to her. We walk over to her and extend our hands. She looks perplexed, but pleased to be asked to join us. My dad speaks in a hushed tone. His words are caring and kind. He explains a story of meeting Sir without using his real name. "That's a fascinating story. Thank you for sharing it with me," she says, still looking rather perplexed. "We have asked you to speak with us because we believe that you might know Sir." "Really?" she asks. My dad points to the painting and says, "Edward John." Her face becomes soft. She gazes at the painting and says, "Yes, I do know Edward John." As her eyes fill with sadness, she adds, "He just recently passed." We look at each other, and my dad extends his hand and places it on her arm. He leans in close to her and says, "The man we know as Sir, we also know as Edward John." The room falls silent. She studies my dad's face in disbelief. "You mean to tell me that you are Edward's family?" "We are," my dad says, and I could see his own eyes filling with tears. She weeps on his shoulder without hesitation. My dad places his arm around her to console her. He gently moves in a slight back and forth rocking motion for comfort. When she gets her tears to stop, she pulls back and holds my dad's face with both hands. "What a beautiful surprise," she declares. "A perfect day for a perfect gift." My dad and I both look at each other. Then my dad says, "We know that phrase. We know it from my grandfather." As the story unfolds, the woman mentions that she has heard of my great-grandfather and had known the phrase, "Today is a perfect day for a perfect gift," from years ago. She mumbles, "That must be at least 50 years ago now." Just to ease my mind, to make sure she is in fact Sir's beloved, I ask, "Have you ever been to Italy?" Her eyes shine with light and a warm smile is present. "Finnan, Italy is where Edward and I met." "It is you!" I say with awe, and I can't help myself but put my arms around her to give her a hug. "You are a fine young man, Finnan. I can see how you would be part of Edward's family." She places her arms around my dad and I. We hold each other, surrounded by feelings of deep gratitude. With pride and admiration, she says, "Edward was a fine man who lived his life to the fullest, but in a way that he liked solitude and peacefulness. He was a man of many talents, who dabbled in many things. We were blessed to have found Edward. It was Finnan here who met him at the post office one day. He spoke about the boy and his friends with the animals who assisted him that day," she says fondly. To me she adds, "And you are that fine young man that I have heard so much about." "Sir spoke about me?" I ask with excitement. "Finnan, he spoke about you and your family, and now I am blessed to be in your company." I wonder where she fits in. Were they married? "May we ask your name? We haven't been properly introduced." "My name is Barbara Austin. You are welcome to call me Barbara, but most people like to call me Miss Austen." "I like Miss Austen," I say. "It is a pleasure to know you. I don't mean to be so personal, But would this mean that you and Sir were not married? She looks at me with such a twinkle in her eye, just like Sir would do when he looked at me with an expression of sly innocence. No, Mr. Finn, we were never married. We traveled the world together and became the dearest friends, friends that never part. But, why didn't you marry if you were his beloved, as he called you? My dad speaks up. Please, Finnan, do not ask such personal questions. I turn red, thinking I have spoken out of turn. Mr. Finnan, Sir wasn't able to marry. What do you mean? I ask, bewildered. She takes a deep breath, almost a sigh. She is hesitant to answer. It's okay, I say. It isn't my business. I just thought the way he spoke about his beloved, she was his wife. I didn't mean to get so personal. Finnan, it is okay. She looks at my father deep into his eyes, and as we all sit waiting for the answer, she begins to speak in the most delicate tone. Edward left his village to much of his family's dismay. You see, it is tradition to marry someone from the village, and when you are royalty, it is a must in their heritage. Once he realized he was not going to be able to fall in love, so to speak, he left the village, never to return. But in all the years that followed, he felt that if he did marry, he would be betraying his heritage and the honor of his family. Wow, I say. So Sir is the man who helped the village. Oh yes, Finnan. Edward gave all he had to the village and its people. But he also knew that if he wanted to live his life freely and quietly, royalty was not going to suit him. He packed his belongings and wrote a note to the villagers, and in the note he stated that though it was an honor to be part of the village ancestry, he was going to do good deeds in other places of the world, which he did, of course. Dad, would this mean that we are royalty? I'm not sure, Finnan. We are all family. Now, Finnan, this was 60 years ago and traditions have changed. Today it is very possible that Edward would not have a wife chosen for him. But back in those days, in that village, it was the way. Would you have married him? I ask. Finnan, that is way too personal, my dad says in a strong tone. She looks at my dad and his face softens. I would have married that brilliant man 1,000 times over. We had spent our adult lives together, and so to us, we were married, certainly dedicated and married from our hearts. I sit quietly with many questions, but I do not want to ask another to upset my dad or betray the trust of Sir. When I became unwell, we made the decision that I move to a place that has care for me. Edward visited every day and spent endless hours with me. That's why he dressed so nicely, I say. He was visiting you. Miss Austen blushes and says, Edward was a romantic at heart. He would bring me poetry, chocolates, drawings, stories he had written, but in all his offerings, I adored when he would share stories, and he certainly was sharing about you, Mr. Finn. My heart feels full. My dad is pleased to be part of the brilliant exchange in finding Sir's beloved. I lean over to him and say, See, Dad, miracles happen. He looks at me with a sense of gratitude and says, Finnan, You are the miracle for allowing me to be guided by my heart. You've shown me how to listen to the whisper of my own heart, which has led us to here. Mr. Max has been silent the entire conversation. He stands and says, "I will return in a moment." As he leaves the room, we just sit in stillness, in peace, and I hear my heart. Love is the answer to all things. I smile gently to myself, and as I take a deep breath to collect my thoughts, Mr. Max re-enters the room. He is holding a box. "Does this look familiar to anyone?" he asks. We study the box, and one by one, we shake our head. We are not familiar with the box. This box was given to me by Edward. I call him Mr. Edward. We all smile, knowing he would have. He opens the box. Inside is a pair of cufflinks. Extraordinary cufflinks. They are gold with ruby stones. These cufflinks were given to me the day I moved to the facility. This was the last place I wanted to be, and leaving my home was very difficult. Edward was here visiting Miss Austen when he met me in the lobby. He could see I was distressed, and so he asked me if I knew where home was. At first, I looked at him in bewilderment, thinking perhaps he was lost and confused about where he was, as that can happen at our age. He looked me in the eye, shook my hand, and said, "My name is Edward, and I am asking you if you know where home is." I looked around my new world, and I shrugged my shoulders in sadness. I replied, "I guess this is home." And as I said it, I could feel a tear sting my eye. Edward then placed his hand in his jacket pocket and removed this box. He asked me to hold out my hands, and as I did, he placed the box in the palms of my hands. He looked directly into my eyes and said, "Home is in your heart. Home is when you close your eyes and be any place you wish to be. Home is where you stand. Home lives within you and lives through you. Your heart is home, no matter where you are." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Here I was, feeling such a loss, having to move here, and then I met this man out of nowhere, who is like a gift from the heavens, letting me know that I am not alone. I knew he was sent to deliver that message to me that day, and from that day forward, I have always been at peace at home, my home in my heart. "What were the cufflinks for?" I asked, wondering why Sir would carry such things around in his pocket. "I wondered the same thing, Finnan, and I wondered why he would offer such an extraordinary gift to a stranger. All of us are hanging on to his every word." "Why did he?" I asked. "He had the cufflinks in his pocket to remind him of his father, for they were his father's cufflinks, and when he saw me longing to be elsewhere, knowing I was homesick, he offered me the one thing that reminded him of home. It was an extraordinary gift. I keep the box beside my bed, and at night when I give gratitude before I sleep, I think of home. Of all the places that were my home when I was growing up, of all the places I have lived on this planet, and Edward was right. Home is in your heart." As we are saying our goodbyes, something occurs to me. "Dad, the cufflinks would have belonged to great-grandfather's brother Roy. This means that somewhere, perhaps great-grandpa could be royalty as well." My dad ponders this as he gazes at my face. "Yes, Finnan, you may be right. After all, Sir's father was Grandpa's brother. My dad looks confused as to all the pieces of the puzzle are going to fit. We found Miss Austen. That is a miracle, I declare, very proud that we didn't give up, and to find she lives in our community. As we drive home, there's plenty to talk about. Finn, I wonder what else we are going to find in the treasure chest. I'm not sure, Dad, but we are going to make a night of it. I think it's supposed to be on game night, which is next Friday. Yes, Finn, it is next Friday evening. It seems that the mystery is unfolding with each step we take.